Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As, and as I've been doing lately, the first 7 questions or so are going to be just general fitness, nutrition, training related questions. I'm going to do a couple questions about TRT and PEDs after that, and then I'll answer, today instead of one, I'm going to do 2 personal questions just related to, actually these were both politics related involving Texas versus other places, and you guys know I live in Texas, and a lot of you seem interested in some of my views and a lot of people don't, so that if you're not interested in those things, that's cool, just chime on out. You're not going to be forced to listen to them to get the initial information, so the more controversial and optional stuff is going to be at the end of the video, so that way people who don't care about any of those things can just skip right through it by watching the other stuff first. Alright guys, so let's get started on the general fitness questions. First question: hey Jason, great channel mate, thank you. Just wanted to get your opinion on the best core exercises. I've just started lifting weights at 43 and tried doing squats and nearly folded in half. I read that I probably have a weak core. Any suggestions that would be greatly appreciated? Yeah, you definitely have a weak core there, but you know what, man? Props to you for getting in the iron game at 43. It's not too late to start for you. So, but you just need to be aware that you're going to have certain muscle imbalances, weaknesses. It's going to be slower than for these younger guys. I think it is awesome that someone decided at 43, you know what, I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to lift weights, I'm going to be healthy and fit. That is awesome, so props to you, brother. Now, that being said, yeah, you've got a weak core. What you're going to need to do is step the weight back down. You're going to need to go with a lighter weight. You're going to need to start doing core exercises. What I'm going to recommend that you do for your core, take bands, put bands over a rack above you and do standing crunches with bands around your shoulders. Just basically you take it, hold it over like this, and you do standing crunches. Do those every day, 1 or 2 sets of however many reps you can do. And maybe start doing a little bit of weighted crunches with just a plate, or just crunches without them, and not full sit-ups, just crunches and maybe some planks in there. And you do that stuff for a couple weeks, your core will be sorted right out. Go up gradual on the squat. Check your ego at the door. You're older, you can't afford injuries like this. You cannot afford to tear something at 43 starting out. Don't go too heavy too quickly. And if you can't do things with perfect form, good form, you need to reduce the weight. It's as simple as that, brother. All right, next question. I've been watching recent Jon Jones lifting footage, and he's doing a lot of exercises that one wouldn't usually associate with an athlete other than a powerlifter, such as wide stance, low bar back squats, and sumo deadlifts. Any idea what the mentality behind this would be? It sounds like he's training for powerlifting. I wouldn't have any sort of field athlete or strength athlete, and he's obviously a contact sport, a combat sport athlete. So I don't know why he's doing these, but will they transfer over to his sport as far as speed and power? Yes, they will. They're just not the best choices. And he's doing it so that he can lift more weight. Obviously, with a low bar wide stance squat, you can probably use a little more weight. For a lot of people, depending on structure, a sumo deadlift, they can use more weight with that wide stance sumo deadlift. And the reason is that you cut the range of motion down. Now, because you're cutting the range of motion down to use more weight, from a hypertrophy perspective, it's going to reduce your overall gains. From even a performance perspective, you're using a different stance than you're ever going to use in any sort of competitive environment, so it's not going to transfer as well. There will be carryover, there will be transfer. Meaning if you get stronger on a low bar squat or a sumo deadlift, it will absolutely give you more strength on a playing field or in a grapple or a kick or anything else. It's going to give you more strength. It's just the carryover because of the stance and everything else isn't going to be quite as good as it could be. You might get 1 to 2% less carryover than you could have gotten with the more athletic style. Things like, again, just conventional deadlift, high bar squats, things like that. So he's still going to get carryover. And the thing is, it sounds like he's just trying to power lift, basically, and he's trying to put up maximum numbers. It may not be to make him as good as possible to sport. It might be to just show off and get stronger on camera. All right, next question. What are some of the beginner/intermediate programs you might suggest for somebody who wants to compete in strongman in the long run, but due to limitations in available equipment, is training to compete in powerlifting in the medium term? I've got a dungeon-style gym with just a rack, barbell, and bench. All right, let's skip all the rest of that. He wants to get into strongman training eventually. Build your base. Build your base. You could run like my intermediate linear periodization program, or basically my linear off-season program for strength athletes. It works for football players, strongmen, everything. You could run that. That's one that I have available. It's free. You can run it. But what I'm going to recommend, because you are going to do strongman eventually, you're going to need to put a real heavy focus probably on your overhead press and your deadlift. All the other big lifts do matter. They absolutely matter for strongman, but those, because of the type of events you do, deadlifting and overhead pressing need to be your bread and butter. The other thing you need to be doing is GPP work. All right, so you don't necessarily have the equipment you need. Well, go find some big rocks to pick up and carry. Go find some logs outside to pick up and carry. Someone's barbecue pit. Big, heavy, awkward objects that you can pick up and carry in general are going to help you tremendously in strongman, because that's what most strongman events really are. They're just heavy GPP work. So get out and do awkward, unusual GPP work and awkward and unusual lifts. I mean, start throwing in awkward things for accessories like Zercher squats, hold and carry, just whatever you can do. Anything to just improve your general physical preparedness so that you combine conditioning with strength is going to help you tremendously towards your goals. But definitely my intermediate off-season program would probably be good for you. All right, next question. Hey Jason, in your intermediate program, is it fine to hit RPE 10 on the last rep of the last set of bench press on the very first week, or should I consider lowering my training max? I think you miscalculated your maxes slightly. Your training max, if you tested a training max, you shouldn't be hitting RPE 10 on the first week on the program. So you've miscalculated something slightly. Start back over, lower your numbers 5%. Because you should be closer to RPE 8 or RPE 9. For people who don't know, RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. 10 being absolute maximum effort, that like everything that you have, like in a competitive environment where you're psyched up to hit it, and a 1 being so easy that you don't exert anything. So the RPE scale is how you perceive things. So it should have been around an 8 or a 9, which means you've miscalculated your max somewhere, cut it by 5%, and that should sort it right out. So again, it's just a calculation error on your part, or you just are really bad at high reps right now on the bench press because you've only been doing really, really low reps on it. Would be one of those two things. Either way, you're going to have to get used to the high reps, so you're going to need to reduce the weight just slightly and just build through the progressive overload of the program, and you'll still get great results. In fact, if it felt like RPE 10 on that final rep on the first week, then if you still cut it down 5%, your progression is going to be fantastic. You're going to make gains from it. So go ahead and cut it back. Check your ego at the door. Make sure you run the program right. All right, next question. Sup Jason, you're not pause benching anymore. You once stated that there is more chest recruitment in the fibres than if you touch and go, yet for aesthetic purposes you're implementing touch and go. Why is that? Cheers, bro. Yeah, the thing is, all right, you guys got a really good view of me in some of my training clips, and particularly the video I did the other day of me holding up the meat and everything in Walmart, so you guys can see the example of 30 pounds of meat. And when I turned to the side and you guys saw me from 3-dimensional angles moving, it becomes apparent that my torso and my chest and everything are so big that my 18-inch arms actually look small, particularly with them being as long as they are. I need more arm development, and my chest blows up no matter what I do. I've got like a 51-inch chest right now. So for me, because my arms are a higher priority and my chest seems to grow no matter what, I'm doing touch and go so that I can use a little more weight so that the triceps are getting more work at the top and the chest getting a little less at the bottom. And really the only thing I do for chest is close grip and incline, but I'm not even pausing on either of those right now. I feel like my explosiveness out of the bottom is quite adequate because I've spent 3 years straight pause benching, but I think part of the result for me, for someone who's now trying to balance my physique a little more, not just be a strength athlete, I really need the extra arm development, and doing the touch and go on the close grip bench press seems to be helping with my triceps quite a bit, because I'm noticing there's a strength carryover on it even when I go to tricep isolation exercises, that I'm getting stronger on those concurrently with it, even while on a low carb diet and not trying to gain muscle at this point. So it seems to be helping, and my arms are growing in general. And my triceps are growing, and that's really what I need right now to balance my physique out, because it really is a weak point for me, and everyone pretty much universally agrees that my arms are my weakest body part. And so by doing it that way, I'm prioritizing my weak points while backing down the amount of work I'm doing with my best and some of my best body parts, just to balance things around a little bit. And it seems to be helping, and it's going to be a slow process when you're at the point where I am. And so my reasons for doing that are personal. I still recommend anyone who needs strong chest development or more power with their chest, they need to be pause benching exclusively. In my case, I'm in a different situation than probably 70 to 80% of lifters. So I'm doing touch and go exclusively again now. So hopefully that clarifies that. Just because I'm doing it, please don't assume that it's going to be best for you. You need to specialize these things based upon your current strengths and weaknesses and needs. And at the moment, that just happens to be mine. All right, next question. Hey, Jason, I have a question. Lately, I've been getting dizzy, vertigo almost once, twice every day. It started near to changing my zinc supplementation, but I stopped it to take it for a few days, and I still got the vertigos. Can creatine be creating this overtraining? Look, okay. I know a lot about vertigo, not because of any sort of formal schooling or anything I'd looked at related to fitness. I suffer from severe bilateral Meniere's disease, which I have in remission now. I've worked really hard to get in remission. When I first started getting vertigo attacks, I did a tremendous amount of personal research and medical research into vertigo because it was so horrific and debilitating to me. And I was trying to figure out what was going on with me so that I could figure out which doctors to talk to. And I had gone to like 4 different specialists and was trying to get diagnosis and having MRIs and everything. So I've learned a lot about vertigo. And here's the thing about vertigo. If you're getting daily vertigo attacks, you absolutely need to get to a doctor. It is absolutely imperative that you get to a medical doctor, start with an ENT or a neurologist and go from there. You need to see a specialist immediately because there are over 20 different major medical conditions that are oftentimes unrelated in parts of the body. They could be anything from your ears to your brain. You could actually have a tumor in your brain that's causing it that could kill you if you don't get it, don't catch it in time, to any sort of various inner ear disorders that are actually caused by unrelated things. So you need to figure out what's going on with this, and you need to find out fast because severe vertigo like that could be like my Meniere's disease, and the sooner you start treating it, the lower your chance that you're going to be stuck in bed for 10 months straight like I was. And if it's something like a tumor, you need to find that immediately because they might need to put you on chemo. You might need to have brain surgery. And if you miss it and you don't catch something like that in time, you're going to die. So my advice to you is you need to get medical help immediately. Tomorrow, today's Sunday, get in Monday and try to see a doctor. This is potentially, it's not saying that it is, but you need to be aware that something like this is potentially life-threatening in a worst case scenario and could kill you if you wait too many weeks to find out what it is. So you can't play around with something like daily vertigo attacks. And hopefully it's nothing major. Hopefully it's just a flu or some fluid you're holding in your ear that can be sorted out with an antihistamine or a diuretic, and then it goes away. But worst case, it could be something seriously life-threatening and you could be dead in a few months if you don't get it sorted. So please go see a doctor. All right, next question. Went skiing during Christmas vacation and just broke my right arm. That sucks, bro. If it makes you feel any better, I had a friend back in high school. She was a ski instructor just during the winter time, and she broke both of her legs skiing, and that really sucked. So I've seen some pretty gnarly skiing accident there before. But it sucks that you broke your arm, but let's keep going here. It will take at least a month, if not more, until it recovers. I still want to train my left side and legs. How should I approach my training being able to use only one arm? Is there any way to do any form of squats, or should I just do leg press? How should I go about pressing movements? All right, he's got a training partner to help. Be really careful with some things. If you want to try some one-arm deadlifts, just watch your balance, watch everything. That's not a bad idea. I like that. If you want to do some laying dumbbell work, you can do laying floor presses with a dumbbell. You don't need to get on a bench where you can get hurt. You can do laying floor presses, have your workout partner help you get the dumbbell into position and have him help keep you from hitting your face. But if you keep it down low correctly, it's not going to be near your face. One-arm dumbbell rows. I've seen guys with casts on squat 400 and 500 pounds before. So if those guys out there can squat 400 or 500 pounds while wearing a cast on their arm, there's got to be a way for you to figure out how to balance it also. So squats are still in. Again, one-arm dumbbell stuff with the help of your friend. And you could absolutely try the one-arm deadlifts, or even some dumbbell Romanian deadlifts with one arm. There's a lot you can do there. I mean, you're not limited by this injury. And in fact, the more you train, you need to keep in mind that training the left side for people who are in casts has been found in studies to help hold on to the muscle of the immobilized limb. So you'll actually get some training stimulation that transfers over to the other side to help keep it from atrophying while it's in the cast. It'll help you keep your gains. So you absolutely need to get in there and do it. So get on top of that. All right, we're done with the regular questions. So let's jump over to the TRT and PED related questions. First one. Jason, could you explain if there would be any difference in someone who is completely natural with total testosterone level of, say, 800 nanograms per deciliter versus someone who is on TRT who is also sitting at 800 as far as building muscle recovery body composition thinks? Yeah, first of all, what you need to realize is that 800 drug-free is pretty much from a, not saying genetically elite in all things, because this whole idea of the genetically elite athletically is a misnomer. You have traits that are genetically elite. You're in the very top 1% or 3% or whatever. And when you combine 6 or 7 of those different traits into one person towards a given thing, we oftentimes consider them to have superior genetics. But it's not, it doesn't carry over to everything, meaning what gives you superior genetics for one sport may hurt you in another. So when we come to hormone production, when you start talking 800 plus, you're talking top 3% of the population, maybe even top 1%. What you also need to understand, they don't sit there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's where they peak at certain points. Like if they go get it pulled in the morning, they may spike up to that for a short time. And that same person at evening time might drop to 500 or 550. And whereas in people who are doing the TRT, that peak is hit in the first day or two, and it sustains there for 24 to 48 hours as it tapers down. What we have found in studies is that people who are given a once a week shot of synthetic drugs versus people who peak at that level at the morning, the people who are at the same peak level from the drugs gain muscle faster. And if you look at any of the studies on anabolics that I've produced, you'll notice people on the TRT doses actually gain more muscle than the people who are natural at the same overall peak levels. And it's probably to do with what we were calling the anabolic threshold of you're peaking at least once during the week up to a point and sustaining that for 24 hours or longer. And so during that day, you're seeing more muscle growth. Whereas in people who are normal, it fluctuates day to day, and they're only having it high for a short period of time throughout the day, and then it drops back down. So people with these really high testosterones don't keep it there all the time. And somebody who's in the normal range at 500 might drop to 350 in the evening time, but the person who is on the TRT, they get that long spike and it's sitting stupid high while they're sleeping the first 2 nights every week after the shot. And by doing that, they're going to grow a lot more during that because they have a long sustained anabolic environment that then tapers down through the week. So that's at least a theory of why it happens, but we know from the data that people on replacement doses gain more muscle, slightly more muscle than people who are not on anything. And it's just an interesting phenomenon. It's something you need to keep in mind. All right, next question. The IWF reported 24 athletes caught for doping at the recent World Championship in Houston. The majority of the adverse findings included anabolic agents like stanozolol and methenolone, which is Winnie and D-Bowl. All right, guys. How are they getting caught? The guy's like, is WADA having better testing? Is they improve their testing methods? No, they just actually tested them. You need to realize that oftentimes in some environments, tested athletes aren't tested as much as you think they are because it's expensive. These guys actually all wanted to get caught. Every one of these drugs, these are not drugs that tested athletes use as of like 20 years ago. They stopped using them because they're too easy to pop. These are drugs that can't be masked, like Winstrol and D-Bowl can be detected easily for 3 weeks after you quit taking them on even the cheapest test. So a 3-week detection time drug for an athlete is just, it's unacceptable for a tested athlete who wants to beat it. These guys were not even trying. They were just idiots and weren't expecting to be tested. And you got to remember, they got hit with a urine test. Those won't show on blood for like, if you come off of those for a few days, you should be clean on blood, but they will catch you on urine for 3 weeks easily. So these guys were simply not trying to beat the system. They just went in thinking they weren't going to be tested, and that's how they got caught. Hopefully that makes sense. They didn't realize that they were going to be drug tested and just didn't come off their drugs soon enough. It's as simple as that. Probably because, again, they weren't expecting to be drug tested. All right, next question. Hey Jason, in some of your recent videos concerning gear, you've spoken of synergistic effect of gear. Could you go into further detail regarding this, how it works, biologically, biochemically, and what effects certain synergies have on the body? This is going to be simpler than you think it is. And yeah, there are synergies between certain things like testosterone and growth hormone. So actually, growth hormone by itself doesn't seem to put any muscle on you, but it creates a synergy with testosterone or anabolics, for example, to where they actually cause you to gain more muscle than that same dose would have once you add the growth hormone in, even though the growth hormone itself doesn't ever put muscle on people at any dose in isolation that we found in research. But the thing that you see with testosterone is that you have a diminished return in muscle gain. Normally, every time you double the dose, you only see about a 40 and at the most a 50% increase in the amount of muscle you gain. So going 250 to 500, you only see a 40 to 50% increase. 500 to 1,000, 40 to 50% increase in gains. When you start throwing growth hormone in the mix, it changes that curve back up. So it allows people to use more anabolics and get a stronger response from them. Now, as far as the actual anabolics themselves go, it has to do with things like how strong it is at the androgen receptor of androgen receptor mediated activity versus non-androgen receptor mediated. But that only becomes important when testosterone gets pulled out of the environment and you're not using any test. And the reason is that testosterone itself has strong non-androgen receptor mediated activities. So you don't need, if you've got testosterone in the blend, you don't need to worry about drugs that don't really affect things that much from the non-androgen receptor, because testosterone covers that. But I'll give you guys a perfect example of a synergy to where the sum can actually increase your total gain. So say you take something like trenbolone acetate, hands down probably the most popular anabolic in the physique world at this point. People who are physique oriented, trenbolone acetate is the king these days. There are others that help and have a nice effect with it, but in terms of just gaining muscle, burning fat, tren is the king. However, it has a point of diminished returns to where actually 50 milligrams a day of tren roughly gives you most of the gains you're going to get, and everything after that is rapidly diminished. And in fact, observations are that generally anything over 100 milligrams a day, it doesn't gain much more muscle on you at all. It just seems to have a stronger fat burning effect and kind of a recomposition type effect, but not necessarily more gains. So, but what also happens is that when testosterone is thrown in the mix, it boosts estrogen back up, and it has its own little secondary effects. It has other non-androgen mediated effects. So what you actually find, while trenbolone milligram per milligram puts more true lean muscle mass on someone than testosterone does, when someone reaches a certain break threshold of trenbolone, if they add a little testosterone into the mix, they gain a lot more muscle. And it's because trenbolone, for example, doesn't convert to estrogen. If there's no estrogen in your system, your total net anabolic activity goes down. You produce less IGF-1 in the muscle cells. And if someone throws in a little testosterone, some of it converts to estrogen, so they get the non-androgen receptor mediated effects of the testosterone. And then they get that little boost in estrogen, which amplifies again what the trenbolone does. And you can take that too far, but there's a perfect example. Someone who's already hit, say, 100 milligrams of trenbolone a day, adding more tren in doesn't seem to put more muscle on them. It might burn fat faster, but they're not going to gain more muscle. If they throw in 50 milligrams of a fast-acting test like Test Prop, or even 250 milligrams per week of a slower-acting one like Test Sip, what ends up happening, it increases your gains again, more so than if they increase the tren, simply because, again, they get a stronger IGF-1 signal from a little bit of the nice, healthy amount of estrogen kicking back in and the other effects of the testosterone. So you create a synergy there. And it's also been noted in some cases that, again, you'll probably gain more size, if size is your goal, in muscle mass off of combining 50 milligrams of tren acetate with 50 milligrams of test prop in a day, versus if you just ran 100 milligrams of tren by itself. Even though on paper tren is stronger, and at 50 milligrams it will blow test out of the water every day. But the two together creates a stronger synergy, and it actually produces superior results in terms of just muscle and strength gains. So hopefully that makes sense as far as some of the synergy goes and what's going on there with different hormones doing things. All right, done with the PED questions. So let's go to the personal questions. And these are, again, political in nature. So if you're not interested in my own political views or social views, chime on out. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Let's get to these. Thoughts on capital punishment in Texas. I am very, very pro capital punishment. That's the death penalty. Again, a lot of people won't like that, but that's my take on it. I think dangerous, violent criminals who are a threat to society should be killed. They have no business on the streets, and we really don't need to be keeping them alive. I think the current stuff needs to be increased. Like right now in Texas, if you want to get the death penalty, and we kill over 200 people a year, we execute them. Right now, the fastest way to get lethal injection in Texas is to kill a pregnant woman, rape and kill a woman, kill a child under about 8 years old, or kill a police officer. You do those things in Texas premeditatedly with the full intent to do so, you will get the death penalty here. That's pretty much our big four. That's is what your jury is going to execute you if you are found guilty of doing those things, premeditated. Now, me personally, I would like to see that extended, and I'm going to explain why in a second. I think it should include certain violent sex offenders also. I'm not talking about a drunken rape or a spur-of-the-moment rape. I'm talking about premeditated rape where someone kidnaps a woman and they gang rape her, or a rape and a kidnapped where it's premeditated, and violent abusive rape where they beat someone and rape them and they're found guilty of that sort of thing. A violent assault combined with a rape, or a kidnapping combined with a rape, I think those people should get the death penalty also, execute them. I think anyone who molests a child under about 12 years old, same sort of thing, because of the sheer damage that that person causes to someone for the rest of their life. They almost pretty much destroyed a person, an innocent child, the rest of their life. They might as well have murdered the child. I know a lot of people come back from that, but 30% of people do not ever come back from that properly. Those people end up as drug addicts. They end up as oftentimes prostitutes, murderers, in prison themselves as a result of that trauma because they never get over it. So someone who does something like that has pretty much killed a person and killed a child. As far as I'm concerned, I think they should be charged with murder, capital murder, and be executed also. Now, part of my justification for that is our use of force laws in Texas already allow us as citizens to kill those people to prevent them from happening. In Texas, it is legal. If I walk upon a man raping a woman or molesting a child and I choose to draw my weapon and shoot them to end it, and I tell the jury that I felt it was the fastest way for me to end the sexual assault from happening, I clearly recognize the sexual assault, and I realized I couldn't run as fast to that person on foot as my bullet could get there, and I can convince a jury of that in Texas that it shaved 1 second off the rape time or the sexual molestation time. It shaved a full second or two off for me to use a bullet instead of my hand. That is a valid defense in court. I'm allowed to kill them for that and shoot them and use deadly force under Texas law. So that being, or to prevent one. So anyone to prevent a rape or any sort of aggravated sexual assault from happening, you are allowed to use deadly force to prevent it, to save someone else, or to save yourself from it happening. That is hands down defense in Texas. We're already allowed to kill these people to stop it from happening. I have no compulsions at all about giving them the same penalty for committing it. Because you know what? The people who do that one time always do it again. They need to be put down like a rabid dog. Not talking about doing it as punishment. I'm talking about protecting society. Because if you put them in prison, there's a chance they might break out. If you give them a bullet to the head, they will never do it again. And that's how you resolve that and keep it from happening. But that's just my take on it. All right, next question. And last question of the week, also a personal question. Which country has more freedom of speech, the UK or Texas? This isn't even subject to debate. Anyone who's lived in either one knows that Texas has a tremendous amount of free speech. The United Kingdom doesn't. I've lived in both. I spent 3 years in the United Kingdom. I've lived in Texas most of my life, not all of it. I've lived in other places a few times. And I've traveled around the world. I would say Texas has some of the most free speech allowed anywhere in the world, hands down. And you are allowed to say things here that are offensive to other people. You can say things in Texas that would get you jail time in the UK. You can say things in Texas and it will be thrown out of civil court if someone tries to sue you, that you'll be found guilty of if you can't hire a good lawyer in the UK. As far as defamation, slander, free speech is protected here. The only thing that isn't protected is terroristic threats of murder, advising people and telling people to go commit felonies and break laws. So, for example, if I were to get up here and try to tell you that you should go use an anabolic steroid illegally in your country, if I were to advise you to do that, or I were to advise you to go build a bomb and blow someone up illegally, in Texas, that is not legal. But I can call you a racial slur. You can call me a racial slur. You can say unpopular speech. You can do anything else you want. You can insult someone. You can say something that's not politically correct. And you know what? It is protected speech here. That's what free speech is. And we understand that here, that just because some people don't like what you say is really irrelevant from a legal perspective here. It might be a social thing to where other people can scorn you or dislike you or even boycott your business for it, and that's fine, but the government is not allowed to take action against you for your free speech and stating your honestly held opinions, no matter how offensive they are. And that's the whole point of free speech. Popular opinion doesn't need to be protected because everybody already believes it. The only people whose free speech really needs to be protected are people who are saying things that other people don't like, that's unpopular. And that's the difference here, and that's what free speech is. And we absolutely have that here, and in the UK they don't. The UK has some, what I would consider tyrannical level restrictions on speech. Just like they have a tyrannical level restriction on weaponry that honestly I don't see how anyone there considers their country to be free. It's a complete tyranny. Just my opinion having lived there. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.